You've been searching for the best way to generate passive income in your life and heard that real estate is a great way to do it. But you're tired of all the so-called gurus who are all talk and no substance. Get ready to celebrate because Kevin Buck has spent 14 years successfully making it happen. This is the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast. Now, here's Kevin Buck.
Hey guys, Kevin Buck here, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast, where our mission is to help you build and maintain massive amounts of cash flow through income-producing real estate investments. And our guest for this week's show is real estate investor and special needs housing expert, Glenn McCrorey. Glenn is a landlord from Iowa who has an incredibly unique and very appealing niche in the real estate space. Now, I always like to throw out a disclaimer in the beginning here when I have a guest on the show that focuses on single-family investments, because I usually try and stick solely to multifamily or commercial investment types. And today's going to be one of those days where we don't, okay? We go against the norm. Now, for those that don't know, I've personally have owned hundreds of single-family home investments. In addition to that, hundreds of apartment doors, thousands of mobile home park lots, and many other types of miscellaneous commercial real estate. And my least favorite, from a cash flow perspective, is single family, okay? But I'm going to let me tell you a little bit more, okay? So now, with that being said, that doesn't mean that you can't make great money on single family rental investments. I just think that there's a better way to build large streams of predictable cash flow. But, now this is a big but, today's guest has a business model in the single-family home space that will place a very, very strong argument for why single-family homes can offer very high returns along with long-term stable cash flows. Now, Glenn was actually able to quit his job in the aerospace field and has moved on to master what I would actually consider to be a hassle-free landlording business. And those two words normally don't go together, hassle-free and landlording. And even if you're like me and you prefer to invest in multifamily or commercial investments, I think you're going to absolutely love it, because his business it makes a ton of sense. I mean, in businesses that make sense, you need to keep your ears open to and pay attention to. So before we get on to the show with Glenn, I want to mention a few different things here, just a couple updates. Most recently, we closed just a couple weeks ago on our most recent acquisition as a 2-park mobile home park package, totaling 185 lots up in Salisbury, Maryland. In fact, I'm telling you this because we just released last week a video drive-through podcast over on our mobile home park investing show that you need to go and check out. I actually did a drive-through video. It's about 10 minutes long, and I walk you through in detail the step-by-step process that we went through to purchase this property and how we're going to maximize the value over time. And the best part of this recent 2-park acquisition is that we did get bank financing on it, and the bank used a third-party appraiser, and the appraisals came in at nearly $1 million higher than what we were paying for the 2 parks together. So pretty exciting, right? I mean, I was pretty excited. I was not expecting that at all. So if you have not done so, go over to iTunes. You can either just search my name or search Mobile Home Park Investing. You'll find that podcast. It's called the Mobile Home Park Investing Podcast. Pretty easy. And I'm positive that you're going to find a ton of value in that particular drive-through video. In fact, I would go as far to say that even if you have no interest in mobile home parks, which I know that a lot of you probably don't, you could care less, you should still be able to gain a ton of actionable knowledge and value from that show. So, I mean, everything I talk about in that show can be applied to just about every other form of real estate, whether it be single family, multifamily, commercial. It doesn't really matter, okay? Everything is applicable to whatever type of real estate you're in. And so that kind of leads me on to my next point. My team over at Sunrise Capital Investors, that's the name of our investment arm. We're always looking for individuals to partner with on future deals, just like the ones in Maryland. So we have a handful of other parks in contract, and we're seeking accredited investors who are interested in potentially partnering together. So if you'd like some more information about the opportunity of working with us, you can go to sunrisecapitalinvestors.com. And lastly, guys, if you happen to be in the Tampa Bay area, I'm over in Clearwater on the West Coast, over near the beaches. If you're in town for business or pleasure, whatever it might be, I'd love to meet up with you. I love meeting others that share a similar passion or same passion for real estate. It doesn't have to be mobile home parks. It can be any type of real estate investing. I just love meeting others and just talk and shop. So you can shoot me an email to my personal email address, kevin@kevinbupp.com. Just let me know when you're coming into town, and we'll try to coordinate a time to get together. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our guest for today's show, Glenn McCrorey. Glenn, how you doing today?
Great, Kevin. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I want to thank you for joining us. And first and foremost, Glenn, I gave you a little bit of an introduction there, but I'm sure I missed many bits and pieces about your background and your overall experience. So if you would, maybe just take a few minutes and tell us a little bit more about yourself and really how you got into this niche.
Sure. Well, I've been married for 30 plus years and got a couple of grown kids, both of whom are investing in real estate as well. But I think it really kind of started when I was about 25, and I got to Delta Airlines as a mechanic. And you're thinking, this is a great job. I'm going to have a great career here. And you're working with guys wearing the same mechanic's uniform and toolbox, and you're 25, they're 55, 60, and you just see your future and go, I don't think so. It's like, I don't think I can do this. So I started looking and reading and trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and was thinking, well, if I could just kind of better myself within the aerospace industry, get into sales or get into financial services. So I dabbled in, I got my securities license 6 and 63 in property casualty, life and health. I was like trying to figure what could I do to not be a mechanic for the next 40 years. But so I wound up working for a company as a customer trainer. So I was teaching other mechanics how things worked, avionics equipment. And while I was doing that, I was going to night school and going through an MBA program. I read, someone told me to read Rich Dad Poor Dad. You probably heard this story before. But so I'm halfway through the program. I read this book and I almost quit because I'm like, you know what? The lights went on, the clouds parted. That's it. I can buy a house. So I had heard of the big pile theory. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not. No.
So everybody puts their money in a pile, and you look at the people with the big pile and go, well, what do you do? Well, I won the lottery. Well, what do you do? Well, I inherited this. What do you do? Well, I'm a doctor. I married it. Then you finally get to somebody with a big pile that says, well, I bought real estate. And I'm thinking, well, I could do that. I could control that. And so I just thought real estate would be the perfect thing. And if I just bought one property a year for the next 20 years, I could retire. I think I was 39 when I read the book. Like, do this for 20 years and retire comfortably. And just the more I got into it, I just read more and listened to books and tapes and just kind of immersed myself in all things real estate and got more and more excited about it. And my wife was working at a company just like I was. And what we were doing was basically living on my income and saving her income and any extra bonuses or anything I could get to squirrel away money to buy the next property. And we were doing a lot of the work ourselves, getting things, painting and doing different things. And so we were trying to do that one a year, and she became a realtor, thought that made sense. And her colleague, who was on the board of a nonprofit that takes care of people with special needs, approached us and said, hey, I know you've got some rentals, and she's a real estate agent. This nonprofit agency that gets paid by the government to take care of folks with special needs in homes are not happy with a few of the houses that they're renting. Would you consider finding them something else? And they would rent. And so she had to explain to us how that worked. And we said, yeah, that makes sense. And once we did it, we bought them 4 houses that year. That was in 2008. And so I saw how with the other 4 or 5 houses I had, I was getting excuses like, sorry, I'm late with the rent. I was in a wedding. I had the red tux and stuff like that. And I was like, the nonprofit just pays you in full, on time, 100% every month on the same day, no vacancy. And I just thought, hey, there's something to this. So then it took a while, but next thing you know, you're dealing with multiple agencies and the word of mouth gets around and they call you, and you're not actually going out and trying to find motivated sellers and lots of marketing and buying low priced houses. You're starting with your end customer in mind. Okay, it's these 4 ladies. They're going to pay $13.50 in rent. They need no stairs, blah, blah, blah. And then you just go out and find it, MLS, buy it, put them in there, and they just stay forever.
Everything you're saying is completely against the grain of the normal
Right.
investment model. As far as like, you find a client first and then you go find the property. Normally it's the complete other way around. You find the deal, you find the opportunity, you buy it, and then you actually have to go find a renter to live in it. And so it sounds like you actually got your start in the traditional type of landlording business first, right? So you mentioned those first 4 properties. You were the landlord. You were the guy that was handling the phone calls, the plumbing issues, the roof leaks, the stories of why they're not paying rent on time that month. I love those. They're always very unique. Some are more, crazy than others. Everyone's always got a story. I've got stories. You got stories, Glenn. But the tenants have the best stories.
I got stories.
Yeah. So I want to hear from your perspective. I mean, you gave us just a little taste of it, of the difference. And so when you stepped into this new model, when you found out, you discovered this new model, you say that, these agencies that, they pay on time and, it's secure money. Like I know that we didn't talk about turnover yet, but I know that you and I discussed that there's pretty much, there's no turnover. The turnover is non-existent. But talk to me a little bit about the landlording aspect of it, because are you still getting away from it? Because I think one of the big draining factors of being a property owner, if you're going to self-manage, is the repairs and maintenance issues. You can have vendors and things like that, but if you're still the property manager, you're going to be the intermediary that's dispatching the plumber, dispatching the electrician or the roofer or the handyman, whoever it might be. So are you truly getting away from that in this new model that you've taken on?
I would say close to half the properties, the company that I rent to has a handy person. It's usually a guy, but it's been a woman before, so I'm just going to say handyman. So, for instance, I've got a customer that's got 19 properties, and every one of them, the handyman will get the call before me. There's a process for them because this guy's on a salary for the nonprofit. So if there's a loose doorknob or whatever, he goes over once a month and checks the furnace filter, changes the batteries in the smoke detectors twice a year, takes the fire extinguishers and has them serviced once a year. Sprays for weeds, it's really nice. Of course, now if they say, hey, you know what, that roof's looking a little long in the tooth, I say, it's in the budget, so I do what I got to do. But the ones that have the maintenance person is really, really hassle free. Not all of them have that, and so that's one of the downsides. If it's a company that doesn't have a person like that on salary, then they'll call you up and say, hey, the fridge is not working. And then I got to tell them that the fridge isn't covered in the lease. I don't take care of appliances, that sort of a thing. Or if it's something that I need to fix, hey, the hot water heater's out, I get somebody right over there because, that's no good. So I try to be really responsive and just, this is what I do and this is what I don't do and this is what you're responsible for and what I'm responsible for, and just communicate like that. And it works out pretty well. There's days at a time where I don't talk to anybody about anything, and then maybe you get a couple phone calls or an email. But my good grief, a job's pretty time consuming too. Yeah. So okay, I can handle it.
So that's interesting. So you said half of your clients, or I guess you said 19 or so, they have their own on-staff handyman. So does that mean when something needs repaired or replaced, that they're essentially footing the bill for it, or do they just bill you back for the hours and any material that's used?
And so that's one particular customer. I have some others that I rent 2 houses to, or a couple to, that they also have a maintenance person. So the way it works is I took a page from Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week. So I've been trying very hard not to buy myself a job, so I have such a good relationship with that particular company that I just said, hey, anything that's $100 or less that you think I should pay for, just do it and send me the invoice. Because we've never had a problem. That's the same company I've been renting to since 2008. So yeah, it just works really well. I never get an invoice and go, well, wait a minute, you knocked a hole in the wall. Why am I paying for this? They know what they should and shouldn't be paying for. So I just bought some other properties, a package of properties, and we worked it into the lease that kind of turned that on its head. Anything that's $100 or less, regardless of what it is, they're taking care of it, not me.
Okay.
And that was part of, so when I bought these properties as a 13 all at once, when I bought those, here's the price, here's the terms and conditions, and one of the conditions is anything that's $100, no matter what it is. Because I'm not technically renting to the individuals through special needs folks. You're
renting to the agency, right? The nonprofit.
Correct. Yeah. Right. So it's a business arrangement. So, and that's another good thing. Most of your communication is via email, so it's not like you're getting a ton of phone calls about toilets.
You're not getting the calls from from the actual residents that are living in the homes. You're getting it from the actual nonprofit.
No.
Okay. So
first, you do not want to put your phone number on the refrigerator.
Got it. So
you want to deal with management.
Who are not the nonprofits, but the actual residents? I mean, when we say special needs, what does that really mean?
Well, if there's a scale. It's anything from, hey, they just are in a wheelchair and they're not going to work and they're on Social Security disability and they need care and they need help getting out of the tub and that sort of thing, to some people are very high functioning and they get up every morning, have breakfast and get on the bus and they go work at the Goodwill or the grocery store and do things like that. I mean, there's a spectrum. And so the higher functioning folks are easier to deal with because they don't have like wheelchairs banging into things or have impulse control issues where they're maybe making a hole in the wall when they get angry and stuff. But I don't screen for that. They just tell me what they need. And I just know that some folks are a little rougher on the house than others, but it all averages out.
Okay.
And if their modifications need to get made, like widening things or ramps being put in, then I allow them to do that, but I don't pay for it.
Okay, I was going to ask that question. So then they'll do it. The nonprofit will do it. If you buy a house and it's not wide enough hallways or for a wheelchair, it doesn't have a ramp access in the front, they'll actually install those items. Okay,
right.
And so the funding for these nonprofits, just to be clear, the funding for these nonprofits comes from the government, correct?
The federal government and the county government, I think Medicaid. So let's say you got 3 individuals in a house. They're all on Social Security disability. They all get EBT, food stamps. They might get additional housing assistance and utility assistance, and then they share the rent. And then they pay their share of the rent to the company, and then the company pays me electronically. So I don't get any checks for these properties. They all come electronically to my bank account.
Okay. Do you ever get any pushback from the neighbors when you purchase a new property from the surrounding homes that are in a particular neighborhood with this business model in place?
It's happened a couple of times, actually. One time we just put a privacy fence. Actually, the company put the privacy fence between the house and the neighbors just so they could give more privacy. That's only happened a couple of times. And it's just like, I could be dealing with the same issues if I had any renter in that house. And it's not your tenants that are the problem. It's the closed-minded individual next door.
Sure.
So.
No, I understand.
Yeah. But,
okay.
Yeah, financially not really an issue, just kind of it happens, but it's not a big factor.
Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit. I said you kind of going against the grain with this business model as far as, instead of finding the property first and then finding a renter, it's quite the opposite. These agencies, now that you build a relationship with them, they come to you and they say, hey, Glenn, I've got a need for a 4-bedroom, 3-bath home, single story, in this particular area of town, the zip code, the city, whatever they tell you. Is that essentially how it works? I mean, then after you're told what they need, you get on the MLS and you go shopping, right?
That's about the size of it. So the last house I bought was in a town called Mason City. It's a couple hours up the road from me, and I'm not very familiar with Mason City. So even though my wife's a realtor, we decided when we buy in Des Moines or Mason City or Davenport, we're just going to use a realtor there. And people are going to probably say, well, how do you choose a realtor? Pretty much at random. So, to be honest with you. But so I get a realtor in each one of these towns, so we don't have to be zipping up and down the highway looking at houses. So the last one we bought, I got an email on a Thursday from one of my customers, basically a manager, and she said, "Okay, we're ready for that second house up there. We need 4 bedrooms and no stairs if possible." And it's always implied that they're in a good neighborhood and that you don't want a giant yard, so they don't have to pay to take care of that. And there's just some things just after time you just know to look for. So I went on, my wife wasn't even home, so I just went on realtor.com and I scrolled through and I saw one for $105 and I said, well, this is 4 bedrooms, and I read about it and I'm like, I don't know, this seems like it ought to work. So I just cut and pasted the link to my realtor and to the person at the company, and I just said, hey, what do you think of this one? And I think on Monday they both went over and looked at it and everybody liked it. So Tuesday my wife and I drove up and took a look at it and we liked it, and we wrote an offer right on the spot. We got it for $95. And it's going to rent for $1,300.
Wow.
And they're going to do some modifications to the bathroom to make it wider in one of the bedrooms because one of the guys is going to be in a wheelchair. So they're taking care of that. And then all I have to do is pull up the carpet, but there's hardwood floors underneath, so that shouldn't be a big deal. That's perfect for wheelchairs. So, yeah, I mean, that's like a really simple example. I mean, it's like falling off a log, really. It's just like, we need this. You go online, that looks good, you know, and then everybody looks at it and you make sure it's got good bones and mechanicals and things like that in the roof. And like, no, this would work. And boom, we just don't get greedy. And if I'd have paid 105 if I'd have had to, because the numbers just really work out. And if you start doing a cash on cash, it's like, well, 85% loan to value. They could say it's $100,000. That's $15,000 out of pocket for the down payment. Well, that's going to cash flow like $600 a month if nothing breaks. So that's $72 a year. So that's $14,400 in 2 years. So that's like pretty close to a 50% cash on cash return. So the only problem with this model is I can't do that $100,000 at a time. You know, that would be nirvana.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. Is there a demand? Is there a larger volume demand for like a market like you're in? I mean, in Iowa or different parts of the country. I mean, is there the opportunity to where if you wanted to not necessarily completely go against the grain, you know, like there's lots of really successful wholesalers and guys that do a ton of direct mail marketing, and they're buying stuff for 60 cents, 70 cents in a dollar, to where if you found really good opportunities in good parts of town that you could then seek out these different agencies to see if they had a need for housing. That way you're not just buying it at full retail, you're adding even a little bit more of a spread there as far as your profits are concerned.
Well, a couple of years ago, I was looking for a house for one of these guys, and I saw something pop up that's a few blocks from me for $102,500. I'm like, that's a deal. So I got it for $100 even cash, put about $7 in it, and it appraised for $126, and I refinanced it. And the reason I bring that up is that I let a couple deals go by before that I didn't have anyone to move right into. And so I decided to quit doing that, and I hired a property manager. And I said, the next time something that's acceptable to me pops up and I don't have a customer for it, I'm going to go ahead and buy it. So now I have 4 properties that I bought just because they were really good deals. And then I just turned that over to a property manager, and he managed it to John Q. Public. So I don't have to deal with that.
So is the plan with those traditional rentals, is the plan to basically keep them as traditional rentals until one of these agencies has a demand for another property that one of these might fit? I mean, would you transition it over then, or?
I would if it worked out, but it's one of those things where I don't mind if I just rent to the public. I mean, my margins aren't as good on those properties because I'm a property manager. And most of them I don't have any money in. It's like, I'll give you an example. You see a house for that one I just mentioned. If you take 85% of 126, I think it works out to be around 107 or 8,000. Well, that's what I had in it, and that house rents for 1,100. So I have no money in it, but it doesn't cash flow great. But it's vinyl siding, good roof, good vinyl windows. It's just a rock solid house. And if I got no money in it and it just makes a few $100 a month, hey, that's so be it. That's getting written off against depreciation anyway, so it's effectively tax free. Yeah. For now. So
I want to talk about
that's the way I handle those.
Okay, I want to talk about the financing that you're getting on these. I know you and I discussed this a little bit. You're getting commercial loans on these properties. I mean, each one of these homes that you're purchasing and renting to an agency is in its own LLC. So you're having to get commercial debt. You can't just get a normal conventional residential mortgage. So talk to us a little bit about those. What types of banks are you working with? Are they local banks? Are they more of a regional level? And then, you already mentioned 85% loan to value, but what do the rest of the terms look like on most of the financing that you're getting nowadays?
I'm using just local banks as a local bank, a couple credit unions. I would not even consider talking to one of the big national banks. That's what I would advise. To don't waste your time there. So it's all my loans are. I think I've got a couple at 4.25% and one at 4.5%, and everything else is at 4%. And so it's a 4%, 25-year amortization, and it's a 5-year balloon. So you need to refinance it in the 4th year. And of course, I've thought about, well, what happens if the interest rates start going up? And I go from 4 to 6 to 7 or something. Well, I'll have less principal in the future that I need to pay down. And secondly, I'm not redlining it on the cash flow where I'm barely squeaking by. You know what I mean? So, if you can't make money at 4%, you're just in the wrong business, or you bought it wrong, or whatever.
So are you running do you typically, like I know us, when we buy a property, we like to call a stress test. We run through a stress test as far as like our pro forma, and that's assuming that, we're going to have a balloon come due, and we're going to have to get new debt put in place at some point in the next 3 to 5 years, sometimes longer than that. But, we know that rates are an all-time low, and, there's only really one direction for them to go, and that's up.
Correct.
So what does it look like? Something we're buying today that we're buying at a 4.5% or with a 4.5% interest rate, what happens to that property? And as far as the returns are concerned, can we pay our debt service? Can we pay our overall, our investors that are involved in the deal, the operating expenses? If the rates go up to 7% or 8%, what happens? Do you typically kind of work out those scenarios, thinking a worst case scenario down the road before you buy something? Or
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I like I advise both my kids. They've got some rentals too, and they rent to these agencies as well. I said, look, don't buy it just because you're going to rent to them for maybe it's $100 more than the market, because they're sharing rent. But don't buy it just because it makes sense with no vacancy at the rent they're willing to pay, because there's no guarantees that a year from now, something won't change. Now, I always make them sign up for a 2-year lease from when they move in. So I don't buy it and give them a 1-year lease. I give them a 2. So that helps a little. I've only had one ever move out of a house, and my lesson learned there was it was in a small town and there wasn't enough clients for them to manage. And so when somebody moved out, they weren't able to backfill the person, and it wasn't. I tried to work with them on the rent, but that's only happened one time in all these years. But so I just make sure it's a good deal. I'm not. I want the rents to always be right in the ballpark of what the market is.
Okay.
Sometimes you get a little bit more. Sometimes I work with them when they say, "Hey, this group is really tight on budget, and it takes a while to find something I'm willing to own and maintain that fits within their rent budget." But I've only got one house that rents under 1,000. It's 900, and one's 1,000. Everything else is more than that. So these are not 2% rule type properties. They're nicer 1% rule type properties.
Sure.
And what I do, I plow most of what I make. Actually, a large portion of what we make, I plow back in just to keep buying. And I feel like if I really got the rates doubled, it's like, well, maybe I don't plow that money back in because it's not there anymore. And so that's like a built-in relief valve. It's like, well, I could just stop buying properties because that's where all my disposable income goes.
Okay. Joe, so I was going to ask you, what are some downsides to this business model? I think one, you kind of hit the nail on the head. You said, there's definitely no guarantee. We all know there's no guarantee as far as the federal government's concerned with regards to funding. I mean, it could be next year that they slash, the funding for these types of nonprofits, and so that's a risk, right? And you mentioned that how you mitigate that risk is that you buy these properties knowing that if you had to rent them to the traditional marketplace, that you would still be fine. You would still be able to, cash flow, and they would make sense. That those investments still make sense. And so, what are some of the other downsides to this business model?
Well, and I got a little list here. I thought you might ask me that, but just to point out about the funding, the funding is getting scrutinized pretty heavily for the companies themselves, but the individuals that are truly disabled, that are on Social Security, those people are not getting pay cuts. They get a cost of living raise if there's appreciation. You know what I'm saying? Their money's not. They're not cutting Susie from $800 to $700. Yeah. So, and that's where my rent comes from. It's just the amount of money that these companies are getting paid to provide these services is getting squeezed, and waste, fraud, and abuse, that sort of a thing. So, but some of the downsides are, in my mind, my biggest downside would be if some people ask about an exit strategy. I'm like, well, I don't intend to sell anything, but most people think you accumulate this big portfolio and then you sell it off one day and put a big pile of money in the bank. And that's really not my plan. But I would just say you have a little bit of a moral responsibility if you buy houses and you're providing housing for these kind of people, not to say, oh, you know what? I can make a little bit more than I thought. I'm going to sell these properties and make all these people move. I wouldn't do that. You know what I'm saying? So if someone's going to deal with one of these agencies, I just like to have them in the back of their mind that, hey, it's tit for tat. There's upside to you, but you're providing housing to them too, and they don't like to move and they don't like change, and they came to you for a reason because somebody wasn't treating them right. So just put that in the back of your mind as a exit strategy. Might be a little less cut and dried than if it was just John Q. Public. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Okay.
So that's one. And the companies that don't have a maintenance person, they're probably getting, there's probably like a $10 an hour person taking care of the people, and the boss, makes, maybe they're renting or they live with their parents. And so they're just like, it's like having a college kid, something might be leaking for a couple of days before someone mentions it. You know what I mean? So that's the ones that don't have a maintenance guy are definitely not hassle free, but we do the best we can with those. So.
Okay. Is there the opportunity for those that don't have a maintenance guy, those agencies that don't have an on-staff maintenance guy, to just utilize the services of a third-party management company to address those, or is it just not worth it because there's not that many issues that come in?
Even at the bigger companies, some of these companies are small. Like just have six houses or programs, they call them, that they take care of, and some are multi-state. Half the United States. Big companies, and within those companies, you'll get different. So this area director might be really quick to just pick up the phone and call someone and get the plumber over there and get it fixed. And the other one might say, not so much. They don't want to spend any money. It really kind of comes down to the person you're dealing with, and that comes down to relationships. So I kind of know who's good to work with and who's not as good to work with, because they're a little tighter on things. And it goes back to communication and expectations and things like that. So
okay. So the big question, the $1 million question that I'm sure a lot of the listeners that might have an interest in this niche is, how can they find out if there might be an opportunity in their own marketplace, wherever they live, for this type of housing? I mean, for this type of demand from as far as the tenant base is concerned.
Very good question. These kind of services are everywhere, and the phrase that you want to look for is home and community-based services, HCBS. And sometimes they say home and community-based living services. But basically, so there are different types of services that these companies provide, and some are for profit and some are nonprofit. The only real difference is the for-profits are limited to how much money they can profit. So they can make a profit. It's just not, it can't be 10%. I think it's in the 2 to 3%. They can lose money, they go out of business, and but they don't have to make a profit. So anyway, so these companies, some are profit, some are nonprofit, but they do the same thing, and they provide different types of services. But the home and community-based services is the program where they are there during the day, making sure everybody gets what they need, and or Susie gets off to the bus, and just that kind of thing. That's the services they're looking for. And then it's as simple as call them up and say, hey, my name's so-and-so. I'm a real estate investor, and it occurred to me that you might have some housing challenges on occasion, because you really are solving a problem. Because if you're just a Joe Blow landlord, and I think I read somewhere where 50% of all landlords have one rental property. So when someone walks in from one of these companies and says, I've got 3 or 4 special needs people that blah, 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 your head starts to spin. You're like, well, where do they work? What's their credit score? That kind of thing. And we're talking apples and oranges here. So one reason I kind of wanted to do the podcast was just, somebody approaches you, it could be a very lucrative deal. I mean, if they move in and they're there for years and years and years, and the main pain points for landlords are not getting paid, the turnover between tenants, the advertising, the showing the place. Once you get that in, you're done. So you don't have to do any of those things again for years and years. So, and I enjoy the buying part. That's the most fun part.
Sure. So I was going to ask you, that actually kind of goes to my next question about the buying part. Is there an opportunity? Are some of these agencies or these nonprofits? I'm assuming there's probably a number of them that actually own some of their own homes, right? For their clients or their tenant base. Is there an opportunity to purchase properties from them, which would help them free up some cash?
There is, and I didn't know about that until a few years ago. One of my customers approached me and said, hey, we're renting a house from this other nonprofit. They want to sell it. We don't want to buy it. We already rent a few houses from you. Would you consider buying it? And it was an older house, so I was timid, but I thought I would at least go through the motions and go take a look at it. It was really well maintained, and I bought it. So I offered them $90,000 for the house, and they took it without batting an eye. And then I had it appraised for $126, and so I did, my loan was 80%, and it came out to like a mortgage of about $100. So not only did I buy the house for no money down, I actually had $10,000 more in my pocket than when I started, and everybody's happy, So the sellers were happy. They didn't even counter offer. They were happy with 90. they liked the fact that they weren't really upsetting these people in the house, and those people that that were already living there, it was seamless to them. So yeah, it happened. And then another time I did 2 like that. And then another time I did 4. It was an out-of-state company that owned 4 properties in Cedar Rapids, and I had them as renters in another property, and they said they weren't happy with these people, and I said, "When's your lease up?" And so we waited like a year and a half, and when the lease was finally up, they said, "Look, either you sell him these properties, or we're moving out, and he's going to find us new ones." And I was able to get a really good deal because the out-of-state company just wanted to unload them since they were going to lose all their tenants. Mm-hmm. Well, they've really been neglecting. They had not been good landlords, and there was a lot of deferred maintenance. And
yeah.
Okay. That's good for me. When they treat the people like that, it's good for me because it's more business. Sure.
Yeah. Is the average size of these homes, are they 3 and 4 bedrooms, or are there any that are smaller, like 2 bedrooms? And the direction I'm going with that question is there an opportunity to utilize maybe a multifamily type of property, whether it be a duplex or a triplex, quadplex, or even something bigger than that in this type of scenario?
Well, duplex, yes. My son has a duplex that he rents to one of the companies, but you don't want to get much bigger than that. And the reason is the whole idea of putting people in houses in the community is to get them out of what, used to be a big institution where there were hundreds of people. And you see, so that's exactly what they don't want to do. It might be more efficient, but they're trying to create not an enclave of these people, but salt it out within the community.
Okay, got it.
So that's the plan.
And the average size, bedrooms-wise, 3 bedrooms kind of the minimum?
It is. I've been asked to buy 2 bedrooms before, and it just doesn't work mathematically, and I won't buy anything less than a 3. A 4 is better, and 5, you don't necessarily make more money, but it's more affordable for the individuals because the rent starts going down. So if you're in a 3-bedroom house, your rent might be $350 to $400 per person. But by the time you get up to a 5-bedroom, it's like $300. So it's $1,500 for a 5-bedroom.
Got it. Okay. I'm going to switch gears a little bit now, Glenn. I'm going to ask you this very tough, challenging, off-the-wall question. Not really, but if you could go back into year 1 of when you first started investing in real estate, and I think you said, was that 2008, or was it prior to that?
2004. First thing I bought was in 2004.
Okay, 2004. Okay, so if you go back to 2004 and that very first year of you buying investment property and give yourself some advice after knowing what you know today, what would that advice be?
Well, I think it would be, and not that I haven't been honest, but just be open and honest with everybody, be fair. I think having a business background has helped, transition into this kind of a business model where you're used to dealing with companies and communicating and being professional and all that. I just wish I could go tell myself, hey, but you're going to retire by 50, so get going, So I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and was talking about that to everybody that would listen. And my old boss said 6 months later, he's like, "So are you going to buy anything?" And I said, "Yeah." So I wasted 6 months just because I was excited but didn't know what to do. And I would also say, don't be cheap on things like roofs. Don't get a handyman to put a roof on for you. That's a mistake. But I haven't made any really. My wife and we haven't made any really big mistakes where you're like, "Oh my gosh, I hope nobody ever finds out about this. This is so embarrassing." It's just a bunch of little stuff where you're like, I really could have done that better, or live and learn and chalk it up to experience. So
sure. Okay. Fantastic. Well, now we enter what I like to call the golden nugget segment of the show, Glenn. We're going to wrap things up for the day, and you've already given us tons and tons and tons of golden nuggets of advice, with regards to this niche and investing in real estate. But if you had just one last final golden nugget that you could leave with our listeners that may inspire and motivate them as they progress in their real estate investing career, what would that one last golden nugget be?
Well, I like the expression, start with the end in mind and kind of work backwards from there. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people that are real estate investors are very analytical and have spreadsheets, and I don't want to stereotype engineers, but I'm going to anyway. Just that sort of thing. And, it's like the school system. There's a right and there's a wrong answer, and Robert Kiyosaki beats on that all the time. And it really doesn't work that way in the real world. So you just got to get out there and not be afraid to make a mistake and start moving in a general direction. It's the analogy of, you don't wait for all the lights to be green before you leave the house. You just start going, and not that you should be reckless or anything, but just educate yourself. Someone said, with your formal education, you can make a living. With your informal education, you can make a fortune. And I really feel that's true. And so that's why I listen to podcasts like yours every week and several others, and just you need to educate yourself and give yourself a little confidence that, it's definitely doable. And I pinch myself every day. I just like, wow, that really worked.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And I do spend time thinking about, well, how could this all go off the rails? And I sleep just fine at night. I can't think of anything.
Sure. Yeah, I think Nike probably puts it the simplest is just do it. Just get out there and take some action. Start moving in a forward motion towards that end goal, whatever that might be. And for you, it's buying more real estate. For me, it's buying more real estate. But whatever that goal is for the individual listening, maybe it's buying their first property. Just you got to take the steps forward and just not worry about the mistakes, knowing that they're going to come, knowing that just what your goal is to not make that same mistake a second time around, but extract a lesson from it so that you can avoid it the second go around, and just make forward progress, I think, is the most important thing. So, well, Glenn, this has been an absolute pleasure. It's been a blast. I've been looking forward to this call with you. I really appreciate you coming on the show here today, and I know you've actually taken time out of your travel schedule. You're down in Florida. You're not in Iowa today. You've left the cold, and you've come down
to... It's cold there, yeah.
Yeah, so you came down to Florida, and it's actually what we would consider to be cold here in Florida, but for you, you're probably wearing shorts and flip-flops, and I'm dressed up in a sweatshirt right now with long pants on because it's 50 degrees outside. So
right. It's easy to tell the Midwesterners this time of year. They're the ones in shorts and flip-flops.
Yep, exactly. Well, good deal, Glenn. I know you don't have your website. You're just getting it built and up and running, but you do spend a lot of time on Bigger Pockets, and so for those that have an interest about you and your company and to maybe connect with you, the best place to find you would be on Bigger Pockets, correct?
Right. I respond to. I still get questions about an interview I did there once, and I always respond. I haven't ignored anybody.
Okay, and then so guys, you can go find Glenn. It's Glenn, last name McCrorey. It's McCrorey. Did I spell that right, Glenn?
You got it, Kevin.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Glenn, this has been an absolute blast. Thank you so much again, and enjoy your time here in Florida, and we'll look forward to chatting again soon, okay? You take care.
All right. Thanks, Kevin.
Congratulations! Now you've got more of the best tricks of the trade in building massive amounts of passive income from real estate. For more amazing resources, visit realestateinvestingforcashflow.com, and we'll see you next Monday morning.